Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I'm James, also known as Aramithius.
I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar.
And I am Felix, also known as Banu Hanamasaishi.
And subscribe to our OnlyFans today for free Muattra.
Y'all missed a great pre-show. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah.
This is why you gotta follow us on Twitch. See, now we're doing the professional YouTube thing, cross-platform. Like,
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
It's cross-platform pollination. That's what it is. Thank you.
Pollination. That's the word.
Multi-channel. Yeah, it's multi-channel. So today we're talking about. We decided that it's kind of come to the point now where we need to very seriously address the 36 Lessons of Vivec and in extraordinarily granular detail, and that's a good subject for this podcast, because if anything can get us to just side, like, you know, just get distracted off into the stratosphere and talk about completely unrelated lore crap, the 36 lessons cover a lot of ground, so we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, basically the joke I made was it's the 36 lessons and the 8-in-1 distractions.
Yeah,
so, you know,
1008 distractions. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's one square off your bingo card. Yeah, if you've got 36 lessons in your bingo card, as usual.
Yeah,
so
don't forget to play along with bingo and go online to our store where you can get IRL Tesla themed bingo.
That's right. In real life bingo cards. Yeah, right.
I really should actually post the URL to any show notes for the podcast so that people can actually keep up with that if they're listening.
I would just end up posting to the UESP. That's.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a it's an incentive for people to show up live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're listening on the podcast, no bingo for you.
No, you're not allowed. It's not allowed.
Okay.
You are officially barred. Welcome to your new tyranny. You can't play bingo on.
Yeah, if you're listening,
podcast anymore. That's the real tyranny,
Anyway.
folks.
yes, you're on. You're a bronze member if you're listening to us on the podcast. A bronze
If
member.
you want to complain about this, please do email us at selectiveslorecast@gmail.com. Please.
Oh my
Send
God,
us
the-
And
emails
we will
for us
roast
to
you
talk
for all to see.
The Selectives Lorecast OnlyFans is such bullshit. They do pay-per-view all the time. Oh my God, it's just a $15 paywall for just nothing but PPV.
Right, so you know, we're
Content
here,
is king.
folks.
All right.
36 lessons.
I'm very scared that we're going to get an OnlyFans now. I'm very scared that I'm not going to be
No,
able
don't
to
be
stop
scared.
myself.
Embrace it. Embrace the
I
darkness.
want
Drive
you
the
to.
mongrel dogs from Twitch.
You have my support, Chris.
I have what?
I have your support. Or
Okay.
you
Other
have
way
me-
around.
You
Okay,
have other
all
way
right.
around. Yeah, you have my support.
Anyway,
I love how Andrew
Wouldn't be the
basically
dumbest
just
thing I've
said,
ever
"No,
done.
you subscribe to my own.
36
Yeah.
lessons.
You gotta see the full
Yes.
dump truck.
So
Lesson number 1: have fun shit posting, kids.
Yeah, really.
That's
So-
the message of the first sermon.
What is the first sermon? That is a good question, Felix
Well,
Aaron.
do we want to talk
Arrow.
over the 36 lessons as a whole first?
I'm
but-
sorry. I low-key hate that there's another Felix. It's very
Yeah.
distracting to me. It is not a normal name that I hear. It's always weird when I meet another Felix.
Yeah.
I have met them, and it's like there's a glitch in the Matrix when there's more than one of me, right? And I know that's
Weird.
narcissistic as fuck, and it's not like an actual, like, deeply held thing, but it does just stand out to me. So they're like, yeah, that's a good point, Felix. I'm like, wait, I said nothing. And they're like, right, no, it's such a rare name that I keep forgetting that, like, there's other people.
I feel you.
It's like running into another person named Cyrus. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mm-hmm. You do not sound off base for that at all. I completely sympathize. So let's talk about the 36 lessons in general. Just before we tuck into Sermon 1. We have covered that.
Including Sermon 37 and Sermon 0 in this, or no?
I am going to cover them, but I'm going to cover them at the... Well, I mean, obviously 37 is going to be at the end, but I'm also going to cover Sermon 0 at the end, because Sermon 0 only really makes sense after all 36 lessons have been taken into account, and you can kind of say the same thing for 37. So
Fair enough.
And if during this very long process we get a Sermon 38, I'm going to cover that shit too. So the 36 Lessons of Vivec in Bethesda games only shows up in one game. That's in Morrowind, the best one, and they and they also show up in ESO. But as far as like the Bethesda single player games go, they only show up in Morrowind, and until they showed up in ESO, it was kind of like a pet theory of mine to throw around in my head that they only showed up in Morrowind because Morrowind was the only game where the Nerevarine shows up, and that means that the 36 Lessons of Vivec were written for the Nerevarine, which is not actually a hugely ridiculous idea. They do at times very much sort of seem like they are being written not for Nerevar, but for someone who comes after Nerevar. But on a surface level, the 36 Lessons of Vivec are a series of books, of tomes written by Vivec, but it is not immediately clear. It's never stated implicitly who they're for, and it is reasonable to assume that they were written for Nerevar, or that they are written by Vivec to tell a story about Nerevar. But there are other, is it Vivec fan post to the Nerevarine? Could be. Is it an open letter to Nerevar from Love Vivec? Could be. Sermon 21, could have been. I'm sorry?
Or instructions to the Nerevarine.
Exactly, which is kind of what is kind of the way I feel about them, and to a degree, I'm not entirely sure that. I mean, I've never actually asked him, but I don't know if maybe Kirkbride kind of was thinking like that. Like maybe he was thinking that this is Vivec or himself even talking to the player of Morrowind. I can't say that wasn't in his head at the time.
I mean, I did get some behind the scenes insight. Like a year ago, Kirkbride was responding to me on Tesla. I was asking him some questions about his creative process, and I was interested to see, what things didn't he use, but the things he came up with, and he was like, "Nah, that's stupid," and then he binned it. How long did it take? Things like that. Like, what was his overall process? And he said the whole thing took him about a week. And he said it was like just nonstop work. And thank God for his roommate for leaving food and smokes and bourbon outside of his door. And then he peed in a big gulp cup so that he didn't have to stop working on Sermon 34 or one of the sermons. He said he used everything they came up with. Another question I asked him was, did everything have an intended meaning, or was some of it just kind of gobbledygook that you wanted to, mystify things? Like, is that, it's just to see what people can glean off of it. And he said, no, I mean, everything has a meaning. And then he talked about his sight sound synesthesia. Which plays a big role, because he said he was drawing shapes in the sounds.
Exactly. A lot of every once in a while there'll be a word or a phrase or a sentence in the 36 lessons that sounded good to, like, looked good to him in his head. And that's the reason why sometimes the grammar or terminology can get a little difficult.
And so, I mean, a lot of people, I'm so tired of addressing this. But people are like, "Oh yeah, he wrote these while he was on drugs." No, shut the fuck up. No, he didn't.
No, he may have been a little drunk.
A little alcohol.
He had some bourbon. That's about it.
But no, he was. There were no psychedelics involved. There was nothing like that. It was his own creativity, his own experience with comparative religion, which we know he pulls a lot from Aleister Crowley, namely the Thelema. He takes a lot from Hinduism. He takes a lot from Gnosticism. I mean, he takes all of these things, just kind of mashes them together. Add to the fact that he's got the synesthesia. Now we've got this really...
The formula for crazy.
I mean, yes, I can understand people going, "Oh, he was on drugs when he wrote this." Yes, it's fine to make the joke, but no, he did not. He did not.
It feels psychedelic because that's what synesthesia feels like when it's explained.
Yes.
Exactly. It feels like it's what it feels like to other people. And that's that's
don't do
kind
drugs,
of
instead have synesthesia. There you go.
Well, that can actually happen. There are psychedelics that can produce synesthetic-esque, behavior in people's brains. It depends on the person and it depends on the medicine. So and so there's a lot of so originally when the 36 lessons were written, Kirkbride was originally contracted by Bethesda to write 40 books, and his intention was to write 40 Lessons of Vivec. So originally the number was going to be 40. However, after the week was over, he had only ended up writing 36 of them. And I think he wrote a couple more, I think like one or two more after that, sort of after the deadline was up. But he, towards the end of it, if I recall correctly, he ended up turning it over to Kuhlman. And Kurt kind of sat down with him and worked out a couple of things like, well, this sermon needs to be about this, and you have to. I think this might have been during the process or just before it, as well. Like this is these each sermon has to be we have to make each one of these a skill book. So it would be nice if the sermon had something to do with the skill that it governs.
Yeah, well, I think he said he had a hell of a time trying to figure out how he could fit blunt weapon skills.
Yeah, or light armor.
Into like
Yeah.
so he made the sermon of the mace. I think was what he ended up doing.
And we get a heck of a lot of metaphors, which we'll get to.
Oh yeah.
Purely that, but yeah.
And so you get and he was also the guy who sat down and suggested the Sermon 29's hidden message, and eventually that
was Coleman, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah,
Kurt Kuhlman.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear Coleman.
and then at the end of, I'm pretty sure I said that. And then at the end of Sermon 36, when we have the first letter of every paragraph, the foul murder message was also Kurt's idea, if I recall correctly. But other than that, it was all Kirkbride and stuff that was floating around in his head. And so we have a Yagni, really, I didn't know that. Interesting.
What did it say?
Yagni Stormskull apparently is synesthetic. Interesting. And so we had a So what we did was we have the 36 Lessons of Vivec, which form the beginning of what we now refer to as the metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe. This is sort of where it actually first started. The other universes have creation myths and more, like the Elder Scrolls universe had hints of the creation myths before, like in Daggerfall and Arena. But Morrowind was one of the first games where we actually got a metaphysical structure. And to my knowledge, it's one of the few games in general that has, like in the industry at all, that has a metaphysical structure. That isn't also based on a different IP where the structure was originally created.
Typically, that's a thing that you see in literature and not games, which is why I always approach tests as literature rather than as a game.
Yeah. Considering the way I play ESO, that's kind of the same for me. Yeah. And so so who is the 36 Lessons of Vivec written for? I think we mentioned it's probably easy to assume that it's written for Nerevar. It's also fairly easy to assume that it's written for the Nerevarine. As we know from the Elder Scrolls Online, where they show up again, if they actually do exist in other places and other times in the Elder Scrolls universe, then maybe they're not written for anyone other than the Dunmer in general. Maybe this is sort of like a air quotes Bible or a mythology or a legend that Vivec has written. There's also a theory that I have in my head, which I don't have a lot to back this up, but it's something that's kind of fun to roll to entertain if you have that kind of an idea, intellectually screw around with, is the idea that during the activation of the Heart of Lorkhan, when Vivec and Sothasil and Almalexia grasped their power from the Heart of Lorkhan and became, rebirthed themselves as gods, you can argue that Vivec that was the point where Vivec created the 36 Lessons of Vivec as a revisionist history, and that Vivec as the warrior poet, in other words, as a god who identifies strongly with the written word and with poetry and fiction and so on, you created the 36 Lessons in that moment as a way of solidifying and defining their godhood. And sort of in the process rewrote a lot of Dunmer history, because there are a lot of Dunmer out there who have apparently are not entirely sure exactly how the Battle of Red Mountain went down. And there's a lot of arguments that go all over the place about whether or not, Vivec and Amalexi and Sothisil were actually gods and forming a big fucking, Almcivi Voltron and all this other kind of stuff. So that brings us to that's basically the 36 lessons of Vivec in general. Is it possible that 36 lessons aren't in Skyrim because the Thalmor banned them? I've not heard anything about the Thalmor banning Dunmer religious texts. I don't recall there being anything mentioned about it in Skyrim. Yes, Felix.
I like my
Jesus Christ, that was fast.
Right, like in terms of using Occam's razor, if you want to call it that, like the most likely answer.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of get that when you go to Raven Rock and there's the temple of the reclamations, which was the anticipations, but then we have the gods, and then we have the reclamations because the gods prove themselves to be false. So the reason why you probably don't see them is because the Dunmer were like, the fuck is this dude just like, butchered his own city that didn't help in the Red Year. Like, fuck that, man. We're going back to basics. Daedra worship, man. Fuck them 36 lessons. Ain't nothing in there for us. Like, that's kind of the vibe I got from the priests and like most other Dunmer, which arguably would make sense.
Yeah.
So it becomes far less.
For me is kind of like to them there's no value anymore because whether they found out about Almalexia going insane and killing Sothisil and potentially also Vivec, and Vivec just disappearing, and so Bardao, the giant frozen space turd's gonna murder a bunch of people and turn into the Scathing Bay. It's like, so you all turned out to be terrible people. So in typical Dunmer fashion, here's the one-fingered salute, and bye-bye. I'm going back to worshiping the three Daedra.
Screw you guys.
That's the reason why you don't see it around anymore. Because, like, why would you still worship gods that so clearly abandoned you, or at least you feel like they abandoned you?
Good point. And that is certainly, I mean, it's a very easy argument to say that Vivec abandoned the Dunmer after after Bardao fell down, or before. And
then
kind of the way I feel about it.
Rolls around and it's like, hey, hi, sorry, I was joking.
Yeah. On Mars.
Like, what the fuck?
Takes her a little while. So let's talk about Sermon 1. Each of the 36 lessons of Vivec, as we discussed, are a skill book. The anniversary edition outs them between the Bard College and the Palace of Kings, which makes no sense. Yeah, that is weird. Did he get yanked into Oblivion? So
maybe.
Yeah.
Vivec getting yanked into Oblivion. It's one of the rumors that you hear in the Elder Scrolls 4 that he's taken by Daedra.
Oh, I don't remember that one at all.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I saw a mud crab yesterday. Filthy creatures.
I've heard others say the same. So Sermon 1, like, this is the way it is on the New Whirling School. It's like it's got a whole bunch of comments in it because you kind of have to like I kind of used it as a way to sort of introduce the whole thing. So it's like it's really thick.
I did put a link in Twitch chat as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's up there a little bit. I can put another one in just to.
If you do want to follow along and find the crib notes, just go to is it just newwhirlingschool.com?
Just newwhirlingschool.com.
There it is.
Yep.
That's a link directly to Sermon 1.
And that's a whole bunch of Deadites and Buckney Boss's notes on the whole thing.
And one of the first things that I cover in the New Whirling School is it's really my decision to use gender-neutral pronouns for Vivec. It's not something that I insist other people do. It just sort of felt like the right thing to do for me, and I do not suggest that everybody should try it. Well, I would suggest that everybody should try it, but I'm certainly not going to insist. It's definitely something that takes a little bit extra brain power out of me. It doesn't come naturally to me, and I don't mind making the effort. If anything, I kind of enjoy the challenge. But it's the other reason why I do it is because I have this. It's like a Fananon theory, sort of. I like the idea. I kind of like the thought that Vivec would appreciate people inventing new language for her, like as like the warrior poet, I think would find that a stimulating concept of a new language or new term being invented for her. Why do we use it? Oh yeah, there you go, Krazik. Thank you. Chat lag strikes again, but yeah, that's it. And it's just it just felt like the right thing to do, and I've had people ask me why I bother, and I've had a few people be very critical of it, and none of them are wrong. It's just a personal. It's just how I get down, baby. That's just it's just my kink. You know what I'm saying?
That's how I get down with the clan.
And subscribe to my OnlyFans. But that's one of the first things.
Joke, isn't it?
It's gonna, until it's not a joke, Felix. It's gonna be a joke.
Add that to the bingo card.
Yeah.
Subscribe to our OnlyFans. Gonna be like, wait, what the fuck?
Oh god, damn it! It needs to stop being a good idea.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great, and everyone's gonna love it, and we're all gonna be really popular.
Oh fuck! All right, come on. All right, so Sermon 1. So Born in the Ash is so the first sentence is he was born in the ash among the Velothi, a non-chimer before the war with the Northern Men. So there's a lot to unpack here. Born in the Ash is speaking about the ashes, the ash wastelands of Morrowind. It's about it's the huge fields of ash that the volcano creates, but it's more than that. It's also it's also sort of there's a word for it in politics. I don't remember what it is, but it's trying to reinforce the idea of Vivec as one of the people. You know, Vivec's got commoner blood in him. You know, I'm one of y'all. I'm like, you know, I'm establishing my credentials as a man of the people. You know, and
my grandpappy was a coal miner, and by coal miner, I mean he ran the executive board.
Right. And that's sort of the idea. Yeah, the everyman. Oh, great. Yeah, well done. And where dirty talk is just lore discussions. I mean, we're 50% a True Stool cast anyway, so maybe maybe we just lean into it. And so Vivec is sort of using this, and this is kind of one of the subtexts of the 36 Lessons for me, is the idea of it being like a political manifesto and a political and a manipulation of the people. It's been put out there into the Dunmer Velothi society for people to read and think, wow, this tribunal is really great. Maybe I don't need to be an Ashlander anymore because these are gods that used to be people just like me, and if Vivec can do it, maybe I can do it, and etc. etc. So there is like kind of like a manipulative. I read a certain level of manipulation in this sentence of Vivec sort of playing with the idea of making her part of the people in general. And what we know from the What My Beloved Taught Me, a piece of Apocrypha that Kirkbride published to the official Bethesda forums, is that before Vivec was immortal, was a god, before he was even part of the inner circle of Nerevar and the upper echelons of Indoril, Vivec was apparently a possibly gang leader, certainly a gang member, and a street rat, and almost certainly a prostitute.
Z implies it was her gang.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like Vivec was definitely a prostitute of some kind, and this might be referencing that a commoner background that Vivec has that in my head sort of humanizes Vivec to a degree, as much as you can humanize a mare.
Although it is sort of stepping away from his actual origins. If you're thinking about being a street urchin in Mournhold, which is what My Beloved Taught Me says, being born among the Velothi in the Ash, and to a Netchman's wife as well. It's like it's like a New Yorker saying they were born in a log cabin or something.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't quite hold up. Yeah. My
Yeah.
daddy was a rancher, but you live in a brownstone in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So among the Valathia non-Chimer, that's what the Dunmer used to be called before, arguably Azura's curse or any of the other reasons that you want to give for why the Dunmer are now gray-skinned and red-eyed.
Well,
Before the war with the Northern Men, this is of course a reference to the long-standing tradition of fighting the Nords that the Dunmer have, where, oh, shucks howdy, they love that more than they love enslaving Argonians. It's just...
I think specifically it's talking about the war when the Nords conquered Morrowind in, I think,
very briefly.
one of the First Era.
Do I have a note of that? First Era 222, year 222 of the First Era, ended in
sorry.
First Era 416.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking of the ending of it, not the beginning. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that means that's... and according to my calculations, if that means that this is before the war with the Northern Men, Vivec would be at least 284 years old in the 700th year of the First Era, which is fucking unbelievably ancient.
Not for a Dunmer.
Well, yeah, maybe
also,
not. Yeah.
Like, you know, if you think of like godhood and stuff, it's like,
Mhm.
There's Neloth, which by the way, Chris, great shirt. And then also everyone's favorite Dunmer mage, Vivec Fear.
Yep.
It's like, you know, yeah, I remember bitch slapping Tiber Scepter. It's like, dude, that was millennia ago. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Why are you bringing up old shit?
I gave him a wedgie one time. He was a nerd.
Yeah, whatever, pal. You fuck your own daughters. So
But
So
they're his
come
clones.
on down to Volcano
They're his
Land.
clones. So is it incest or masturbation?
who knows? Vivec Fear is a complicated man. Nobody understands him but his women.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining
When
the banjo intensifies.
Yeah.
When I role play him in D&D, which I've done a couple of times, I kind of make him like Doc Brown but more crazy. That's
So he's
Okay.
Rick from Rick and Morty? Is that where?
Yeah.
but less crude.
We gotta summon more Daedra, Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
And less vomit.
Quick, Morty, use the divination scroll.
Yeah, there you go.
Just levitate, you little whiny little
he
bitch.
was-
Just fucking
Yeah.
levitate up there. Stupid little fucking piece of shit. How do you not fucking know basic levitation spell?
Morty.
You're such a disappointment, Morty.
The scene gets up to 88 souls per second. You're gonna see some serious shit.
Someone needs to make that, but draw. It's Rick and Morty, but instead of Rick and Morty, it's Sewell and what Atribus or whatever from the Greg Keyes novels, and then there's
Atribus Mead or Meady, whatever.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, you've got to involve the Ingenium in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah, get the Ingenium. Like, 88 souls per hour. Gets you some serious shit. That's funny.
Anyway.
Oh my god.
All right,
The
so-
universe is objectively horrifying. Here we are, like, hey, wouldn't it be funny?
Yeah.
We're only one sentence in, guys.
We're only out.
No. Oh my god.
Oh, Jesus.
Look, folks, it's important to have fun, okay? You can't take life
Well, me-
too seriously.
When we
Sometimes
say
you gotta
granular
imagine
detail-
fear as pickle wreck, and sometimes
Right.
you gotta just imagine the
Pickle
ingenium
Vivec,
as the
yeah.
flux capacitor. Like, it's just-
Oh my god, I need fan art of that. Pickle Fear. So anyway, all right. So I came first to the village of the Netchmen. So Netchmen in Morrowind are I don't know how prominent this farming technique is in all of Morrowind, but in Vardenfell, at very least, in the actual on the actual island, Netch are these giant floating tentacled sort of
jellyfish.
jellyfish-looking things that are harvested both for their what
They're leathery hides
Leather.
and the jelly.
Leather, yeah.
Yeah, they're for their hide, their jelly, and I think one other thing, and I can't remember what it is. And I think there's an ingredient that you use in food somewhere that's not jelly. I think it's like their antenna or something. And so this I suggest this in the New Worldling school, but I do kind of feel like this is more of the Vivec is one of us kind of things, or Vivec is the son of a cattle farmer or something, whatever you want to say. And
sort of cowherd stuff. Yeah.
Right. And it is relevant to Vivec because Vivec's weapon of choice is a Netchman's spear, which is the Netchmen use these spears to hook, or they call them hooks or spears, whatever, or that actually could actually be two completely different implements. But the spears are used to sort of spear and anchor the Netch to lead them around by a tether, basically. And I don't know where Netchmen fit into like the sort of the caste or social structure of Dunmer, but or Chimer, but my assumption is that it's a lower caste. The Chimer don't really, and the Dunmer didn't really have a caste system, but it's sort of like a lower class, is what I should say.
Generally speaking, when you find them in the Elder Scrolls 3, when you're wandering around, they're generally kind of like small huts out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's not even like they're used in the big farms, particularly. It's not. They're not a plantation thing, so the big rich farmers don't get involved with Netch for whatever reason.
Yeah, right. Slovakian. He was a carpenter. Yeah, a little bit.
So I can explain that from a cultural standpoint about why is the Netch were very likely, a semi-wild kind of herd roaming the prairie, kind of the way buffalo were. So early Velothi / Ashlanders would just kind of like follow around and say, "This is a great animal to harvest. Like we get leather from it, we get a food source.
Okay, whatever this jelly crap is,
around and breed them. So like this is really useful, but obviously that means like as they drift away, we got to kind of move with them to a certain extent, and so that's why that would naturally lead to like a sort of more frugal living standard. So it may not even be a caste thing, it's just like a cultural thing, the same way there are still people in like the remote corners of West and Central Africa that still do camel herding, cattle herding and stuff like that, and they just drive various different herds of like cattle, sheep, camels, etc. From one end of like one country to like a different area for grazing, or like, it's time to sell them and make what little money we typically do, and then have a big feast afterwards. Like that's life for some people and cultures. So it could just be kind of that of like they're kind of away from establishment society, right? It's like that kind of salt to the earth, typical sort
salt,
of like that kind of salt to the earth. I'm my grandfather's cattle ranch and stuff like that. Like it's that that kind of hard scrabble, hard working rural folk kind of mentality.
Yeah, and that's again, it sort of makes me feel like there's a little bit of political manipulation happening here in the 36 lessons, and that's kind of, and also it's worth mentioning that Netch herding kind of fits with the principle of Ashlander Life, which is supposed to be very nomadic, and you're not supposed to stay and get comfortable in any one place. It's supposed to be by design, according to the Velothi scriptures. It's supposed to be a very hard life. It's supposed to make you tough. It's supposed to make you independent. And that's sort of like one of the core tenets of the Velothi preachings is like we should not rely on gods like the Altmer have. We should be worshiping things that will make us tougher, not things that make us soft. If you want to extrapolate from that what the forbidden teachings of Trinimac were, which we're going to hit in a minute, provided we can make any traffic whatsoever on this subject. If the forbidden teaching of Trinimac were probably forbidden partially because they encouraged the Chimer and by extension the Altmer to rely heavily on the gifts of gods and to praise the gods and to worship them so that you would get things that you didn't necessarily actually earn yourself. Dunmer culture is pretty much do not get comfortable, period. A little bit, I would argue that Tribunal culture is not like that at all. I think that a lot of words and phrases that Vivec uses in the 36 lessons, worship me to win and so on, are very much like the more traditional Altmer concepts of praise your gods and follow your gods and trust in them.
And that's Almalexia is a lot more like that too, because it's the
healing
so mother. She doesn't fit into that kind of house of troubles, testing gods sort of sort of mentality, right?
Yeah.
She's there to provide comfort and healing and charity, and she's
Love.
yeah, all of these really benevolent things.
Right.
In fact, I think she's called the benevolent mother too.
Okay. Better than the Reverend Mother.
Maybe
Like,
I'm thinking of Mara. I don't remember. But anyway.
So okay, like since we're doing the whole like hard scrabble rule kind of family thing, Almalexia is the team mom. She's comforting, gives the best hugs, always comforts you after a bad day at school. Vivec is the cool wine aunt.
Yeah, the fun wine aunt.
Comes
Yeah,
into town every so often. And it's just like, so I've just really been into like healing crystals, and I went on this great lemon juice diet, and I feel fantastic now.
Yeah.
And then Sothasil is like that uncle that no one talks about, who's the black sheep of the family that no one ever sees except once a year at Christmas.
Yeah, but yet he gives you the coolest fucking gifts. Like,
yeah, because
like when next year comes around, you still got that gift he gave you.
You are very into dinosaurs, so here I acquired you a Triceratops skull. And you're like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Then you never see him again. He never offers to do anything for you, but it's just like, hi, Merry Christmas. And then Almalexia's like, well, isn't that so nice? Don't you love your Uncle Sothasil's like, yes, thank you, mother. And then there's Vivec being like, let's get the party started. And like that's basically the tribunal.
Sothasil buys you a TI-89, which you didn't think you needed, but then like years later in high school, you're like, thank fucking Christ he bought me this. And then and Vivec bought you the lighter that looked really funny, and it turned out to be really great for lighting up a bowl. She knew what she was doing.
Did y'all have like bong making culture too when you were young? Because like that was definitely a thing for us. Of like, okay, so we got a can, some tape, and some aluminum foil. Well, what do we do?
I would really like to thank you for assuming that I'm not dramatically as old as I am.
Look, I think this applies hopefully to all who are my age or older. I just don't know about the young kids anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know what the Zoomers are doing. I just know they're on TikTok.
The kids are all right.
The kids are all right. So Iam came first to the village of Netchbin, and her shadow was that of Boethia. This is, of course, speaking of Iam's a relationship, forced, if anything, with the anticipations, the three good Daedra that were worshipped before Almsavi showed up, and the plastics you may have. Oh God, yeah. Who is the prince of plots, and things unknown and known would fold themselves around her until they were like stars or the messages of stars. Let's unpack that.
What is that's the beginnings of trying to associate her with the upper airs and stuff.
Right.
So that's so I don't know whether it's something that's necessarily true or just this whole sermon kind of strikes me as scene setting. So all of the big motifs that you're going to see about the other tribunal members are here. And so you get the kind of the introduction of I'm the face snake queen of the 3-in-1 is the next line down, and Sothasil is I am the clockwork king of the 3-in-1.
Right.
These are all here is the tribunal, and this is what it all means, and all of the metaphors that are or their primary motifs that are connected to them. So I wouldn't necessarily take the stars or the messages of stars to be anything other than here is Almalexia, and here's her theme music, sort of thing.
Well, yeah, except that Almalexia has a very strong so Almalexia takes on the role of the stars, and this is sort of a not thinly veiled reference to Nut or Nuit, the mother goddess in Thelema, whose body stretches over the sky and is lined with stars. And she is a sort of a sacred. Gosh, she's sort of like. I mean, there's a lot of feminine mother gods in Thelema and in Egyptian mythology in general, but Nuit is probably the biggest one. It's sort of like she represents heaven, and all the sexual subcontext that you can read into that is probably appropriate. And and face snaked is yes, sir. We'll get to that. And so this is all. I in my opinion, this is. I don't know why I didn't mention this in my commentary in the New Orleans School. That was a mistake. But this is all sort of a reference to the mother figure of Almalexia and the idea of her being a mother to the Almcivi. However, the only problem that I have with this explanation is that, generally speaking, in at least in Mesopotamian mythology, the mother is usually associated with the ground and not the sky. So that threw me for a loop because I go Mesopotamian with Sothisil. So anyway, I am took a Netchman's wife and said, I am the face snaked queen of the 3-in-1. So it's first off, it's worth noting here that I am took a Netchman's wife, not any particular one, just the first one handy, and it's the like one of the ones that was reasonably adjacent, and that is interesting to me because what it says is basically that the Netchman's wife that mothered Vivec was not chosen because of who she was as a human being, as a Dunmer, as a Chimer, wasn't chosen because of her soul. She was chosen because she was in grabbing distance. So that's important because it separates mythically and magically, it separates Vivec's relationship from her womb mother and ties Vivec more closely to her actual mother, which is Ayam.
Yeah.
So
the Netchman's wife is just a vessel.
Just a vessel, exactly. That's a great way to put it. And so she introduces herself as the face-snaked queen of the 3-in-1. That does reference her mask, which she wears, but it's interesting that that the way she's described as the face-snaked queen, not the snake-faced queen. In other words, her face has taken on the aspect of a snake. It is not. It has been, as I put in the New Orleans School, it's been snaked. Okay, so it's not that she has a snake for a face. It's that her face has taken on snake-like qualities. Now, this is, I could have written an entire website entirely about just the symbolism of snakes. There's a ridiculous amount of symbolism for snakes that you can find in comparative religion.
Yeah, well, not even just in comparative religion, but in Elder Scrolls too.
Oh yeah,
there's a snake figure in almost every culture I can think of.
Yeah, yeah, and usually it's Lorcan.
Yeah.
But I mean, just ask Felix. The Red Guard have all kinds of ideas about snakes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. By the way, Bethesda, hire me.
Yeah.
So,
and
really, Layman Tuttle just left. So come on, someone, get me in there. But, so.
And she. Go ahead.
No, just like a quick observation about face snaked. I think that is a good interpretation of that. So like not snake face, but implying snake-like qualities, which in this case is an allusion to Boethia and therefore Lorcan. Like it's all subgradients at the end of the day. The other thing to note is the role of snakes typically as some kind of trickster deity, but also they are seen in certain areas of certain cultures as like powerful guardians. So like, for example, there is I think it's a cobra that nestles in Shiva's hair, but I forget the context behind that. It's like some kind of guardian aspect. I don't know much about it. Like, unfortunately, the gods I'm most familiar with are the most popular ones, which is of course Vishnu and his avatars, Lakshmi, to a certain extent Kali, because everyone wants to know like, oh, crazy demon goddess. I'm like, no, that's not what she is at all. Saraswati, and of course Ganesh and Hanuman. That's basically like, those are the Hindu gods I know and are most familiar with. You want me to talk about Brahma and Shiva? I'm sorry, I got very little for you, even though they're part of the Trimurti. Like, I am sorry. But I know that like there is something about the association of like a cobra in some way. Like you often see it in Shiva's depictions, because like there are multiple depictions of Shiva. So when you have him in his, I think his destructive aspect. He's like surrounded by a ring of fire. But usually on some way he's got like a cobra, usually like on his head as like part of a crown or something. I've seen other depictions that show like numerous cobra heads arrayed behind him. Don't know what that interpretation maybe necessarily is. I just know that there's something there. So that shows that in some cultures it's not inherently bad. It has to do with something like protecting or guardian spirit or like a powerful source of magic or something like that. So it's not always inherently bad. That's just one thing that I want to make mention of. But in this context, I feel like it's definitely a relation to Lorcan and maybe a little bit of Akavir, because I know there are some people that have wild ideas about Boethia being like Prince of Plots and also related to Lorcan, and the serpent brings the message or like the scroll of the serpent to Akavir and instructed them in the ways of eating, because she ate Trinimac and that was like her gift to the Sacian. So they said, oh, we eat it to become it, and that's why there's the serpent association. But that's like a really deep meta lore kind of thing that we're not prepared to get into right now. But that's just something to keep in the back burner that like some people I know have put out there, sort of made that tangential connection between Boethia and snakes and the Saci, or that Siki, like there's numerous ways to pronounce it. We can have a cast about that.
And they're all wrong.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
And
It doesn't matter how I say it's also wrong.
Oh, well, okay then.
So, the next sentence. In you is an image and a 7-syllable spell, I am a Seti Vivec, which you will repeat to it until mystery comes. So the image is part of the promise of the Sige, the 6 states of the Sige, which is egg, image, man, god, city, state. And we covered that in Sermon 25 in great detail. So hold out for that. Or you could go, it's on the New Warning School, so you can go read it now. Spoiler alert, it's there. There is a lot of metaphysical concepts to unpack in that section.
That
so
one sentence, yeah.
Yeah. And, so a 7-syllable spell, which is also, I mean, a lot of numerological connotation in the number 7, punches. Depends on what
it's connotations in real world stuff. I'm not sure. Does it have any relation in Dunmurray?
Well, that's the problem, is that the Dunmer numerology doesn't really have as much written about it as I would like. Sermon 29 kind of seems to give us a like something that feels like a structure of numerology and like meaning for numbers. And it kind of works until you hit about like it gets a little fuzzy around 10. And then right about the point where you hit 18, it just goes.
Yeah, I always read that as just I am, I Seti, I Vec.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, 7-syllable spell. But the number 7 itself is also very relevant. But the fact that it is a 7-syllable spell is also relevant for reasons that we will eventually talk about in a different sermon.
So something I want to, I guess, throw out there. Would the numerology of the Dunmer change significantly from the numerology of the Altmer?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the numerology of the Altmer.
Well, in Somerset, there is an area you can go. It's like the Grove of the Sacred Numbers or something like that. Yep. And there's this readable, and it talks about all the different numbers and numerologically.
Yeah. And there's also a couple of conversations you can have with some people and some interviews in like the Lore Master's Archive, I think, where the Altmer talk about how they don't like the number 2 because it's a dualistic number.
Yeah.
And it's the number of men is what they call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on. The Altman numerology that I can remember only seems to go up to 5. There's a book that someone writes about various numbers. And it's something about the number. His number is the number of his daughters and stuff. Oh, hang on, here we are. Yeah, 3 is the number of the prime celestials. 5 is the number of the elements. 8 is the number of the planets. Those are the good numbers, which we call 6. And the sum of the good numbers, which we call 16, is a very powerful number indeed. and beware the bad number, which is 2. I'm not sure that can relate to anything particularly.
That's rough. But that's what I'm talking about. Is that this is not really whoever wrote this stuff was in a really tough spot, because if you're going to create a number system, like a numerological system for a culture, the amount of work you have to do to make it work, like have an internal logic, is ridiculous. So, for example, take their thing like, okay, 18 is, or 16 is a very important number. Like they like the number 16. Okay, but then they say they don't like the number 2. Well, if 8 is the number of the planets, which is a good number, and 2 is a bad number times a good number, then what is 16? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like then 16 becomes a even more complex than like just as a good or a bad number. So that's what I mean. Is that
Now, remember, it could have something to do with. No, never mind. That was the Aedra. I was thinking about the Anuad, where it talks about the Aedra and the Daedra being born of the blood of Anu and Padme, respectively, and like one of them was a mix of both. I think that was the Aedra. That was the Aedra, not the Aedra. Never mind.
So like the 2 thing, right, of like Anu, Padme, and the interplay between, that could potentially be an aspect. Also, Rebel King.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like goddamn fucking rebels and kings.
Yes, right. And that's like just the dualistic, the idea that the Altmer don't like dualism is odd to me. Well, they could say that it's simplistic, but it's still like, I don't know, whatever. So, I like whenever I read anything about numerology in the Elder Scrolls universe, unless it's been like, unless like a lore writer is like making a huge deal out of, oh my god, I finally finished it after all these years. It's complete.
Yeah.
My work, yes, my work is complete.
Yeah,
unless it's like a huge celebration, like I finally figured it out. Like it would be, it's in fiction, in world building, to build a number system that has an internal consistency and isn't a clone of an existing number system would require so much goddamn work and intensity that I like it boggles the mind. It's a very difficult concept. And it's super easy to just accidentally slip into Taoism or gematria or something like that. It's much easier to just file the serial numbers off of Taoism and then submit that for your and then take your paycheck and go fuck home. If anybody
I made this myself. It's called the I Ching.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if anybody at ZeniMax Online is curious and wants to pick my brains about it, don't bother. I'm telling you right now, just file the serial numbers off of an existing system and do that, because otherwise you're going to end up getting disappointed. It's very, very difficult work. I do not recommend it. So anyway, which you will repeat to it until mystery comes. That's really pretty simple. I mean, the Netchman is going to pray I am a Seti Vivec over and over and over again until Sothasil shows up, which is going to be a bit. And Sothasil, of course, is mystery. Mystery, Mastery, and Mercy are the 3 members of Almsivi. And Sothasil is mystery because nobody knows what the fuck he's about. So then I am through the Netchman's wife into the ocean water. Nice. Personal space, Jesus Christ. Come on, be a queen. And so she lives in the ocean water because the Set's realm is the ocean, in the same respect that Iam's is the stars and Vivec's is the middle air.
But it's not just Set's realm that they go to. They go to the past figuratively, because we get the involved.
The drag.
Yeah.
The drag.
Yeah. The Drew, the Dreg, the however you pronounce them.
And Twilight, exactly. Baptismal reference, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
You could argue that she goes into the past. That water is the realm of memory, and the Dreg are have their kingdoms of glass and coral in the past.
Well,
I kind of think
previous Kalpa.
Yeah, well, but the Dreg are currently available in the current Kalpa, and I kind of like the idea of the Dreg being like, like these horrible creatures that take her and do terrible things to her in their realms of glass and coral, which we never get to see in Morrowind, but are there anyway. I'm just saying I don't personally buy into the they brought her into the past thing, but I don't hate the idea, so I'm not gonna fight you about it.
I mean, it could just be, hey, I'm showing you some memories. Something.
Right. Yeah. And so, oh god damn it, my fucking font icon broke on New Orleans School. I gotta go.
Subscriber.
Oh, hey, somebody subscribed. Hey, Vecian, thank you for your Twitch Prime. Thanks for that Jeff Bezos money. Good job on you. Don't let him keep that shit.
Bezos bucks.
And so, the Bezos bucks. And so they gifted the Netchman's wife with gills and milk fingers, changing her sex so that she might give birth to the image as an egg. So this is, of course, Vivec is intersexed. And so apparently it's a requirement, news to me, but apparently it's a requirement if you're going to give birth to an intersexed person in the Elder Scrolls universe, and you have to be intersexed as well. So they gifted her with gills so she could sleep, she could breathe underwater, and milk fingers, which is just another word for a penis. That's plural. So all you hentai, gentlemen out there, there's something to think about.
Nice, they gave it twice.
That's right. So yeah, if you're a person of culture, there's a little bit of fan art for you to give us.
If there's snakes involved, there are multiple penises anyway.
That's true. That's a very good point.
Nature is so weird.
Yeah. Changes. Okay, so there she stayed for 7 or 8 months. Now, I made a note of this in the New Orleans School, but the fact that it's 7 or 8 months sort of implies, I think, that the amount of time that she was down there is not significant.
Yeah, it feels... I read it and I thought, well, it's almost a Mickey take of this happened for 40 days and 40 nights or whatever. Some great significant period of time. It was some time.
Alexia's AMA. Yeah, that was... I hate to say this, but I know the AMA you're talking about. That was fucking crazy.
Oh, no.
Well, it turns out, if I recall correctly, got outed as being a lying piece of shit. But anyway... So then Set comes to the Netchman wife and says, I am the clockwork king of the 3-in-1. Everybody who knows anything about Set knows that motherfucker loves clockwork. And he is definitely a king. He's a #1 basketball player in all of Tamriel. That dude is tall.
Like 8 feet tall.
You like huge, like center court tall, like lives in the paint tall.
You walk up to him in ESO, even if you're a tall character, you gotta be like, huh?
Yeah. He a biggin'. And so in you is an egg of my brother. So at this point, Vivec, by the way, has transitioned from the image to the egg stage. That's interesting to note. Even though actually the Promise of the Sis lists it backwards. I think it's egg image. Right? Yeah, egg, image, man, God, city, state. Instead, what we've seen here is an opposite transition from an egg to an image instead of from an image to an egg instead of the other way around. Now,
huzzah, we broke the lore.
Yeah, well, I should mention that I am still studying this. I have not yet been able to find a good, cohesive quote that I can put into the 36 lessons into the commentaries. But the idea of an image and an egg and etc. is dealt with in the young stuff. So yeah, you can tick that off on your bingo card if you haven't already. And the image, the idea of an image, according to Jung, the only really good quote that I've gotten from it was that if you own the image of a thing, then you own half the thing. And I'm trying to find, and that in and of itself says a lot. Like I can get a lot of meaning out of that, but I'm still trying to find more. The egg, as a metaphor, is easiest is easier to find than as a metaphor for the universe, for the Kalpa. I'm still working on it. There's a lot to unpack. Is the short answer.
There's things about kind of egg as potential and
right,
so on, and
but also something that has to be nurtured.
Yeah. And an image is a representation of something else.
It's an NFT.
So if you're,
Oh God.
I mean, that sounds like a really flowery way to talk about a fetus.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So if you're, if
it's
you're
interesting you should mention that.
Image of the father.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the Red Book deals heavily with is Carl Jung's discovery of the living God inside of him, and one of the ways that he describes giving birth to this God is as it appearing inside of him, inside of his soul, as an egg, and that he is caring for this egg as a small, like, primordial pre-birth God. So that does work very well here for the 36
Reminds
lessons.
me of Akira.
Yeah. And so that's kind of like Egg as a trans person. And, that's true, but I don't think that's Morrowind predates that particular thing. Yeah. And so
Morrowind predates Tumblr.
Yeah, it does. And does it? Wait, yeah, it does. Wow, Morrowind's old as dirt.
Yeah, I know we're old.
Yeah.
2002, 2003,
2002.
Mm-hmm.
High
2002.
school, baby.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the cast, but Morrowind's going to be 20 years old, I think, tomorrow.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Is that right? Is it tomorrow?
Oh, shit,
I think it's tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
ESO is doing nothing for Vardenfell.
Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah, I guess it is. There are no coincidences, so that's clearly why we're doing these casts.
Yes, absolutely.
Doesn't God work amazing miracles? Y'all?
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's a miracle, baby. Yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna call it. Okay. He in you is an egg of my brother's sister who possesses invisible knowledge of words and swords. So this is, of course, Vivec is the warrior poet.
Warrior poet.
Which you shall nurture until the Hortator comes. Yay! Here comes the main character. So the word Hortator, I know, if you've played Morrowind, you already know this. The Hortator is a person who, actually, I think it's Greek, I want to say, or I don't know. But it's an old word, and it means basically somebody who brings together... Oh, actually, I have it right in here. It's Latin in origin, and it means an inciter or an encourager, and it's used in Morrowind as the person who is able to bring together the houses and make everybody cooperate. And it's used in the 36 Lessons to describe the Indral Nerevar as the person who was able to, again, bring together all of the houses of the Ashlanders and have them unite against the Nords, and I think very briefly against the Dwemer. So, Set then extended his hands and hordes of homunculi came forth.
Before we move on, one thing that I do find curious there is that the Hortator is addressed in the same terms as Set. So you'll wait at this place until Set comes, and wait in this place until the Hortator comes.
Right.
So which kind of implies to me that the Hortator is almost as pivotal to Vivec's genesis in this whole thing
100%.
as the Tribunal.
The guy who whips the rowers on a train. Really? Fuck. I have it as Latin, not Greek.
Huh.
It is Latin. It is Latin according to the Wiktionary. Hortator is someone who encourages or exhorts or urges people.
Encourages with whips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say, and it still lines up.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Title of a slave runner. There it is.
Oh,
yeah,
well.
There you go.
I'll leave that part out. So then Set extended his hands, and hordes of multitudes of homunculi came forth. Homunculi, of course, being a euphemism for sperm. Each like a glimmering rope through the water. Wink. And they raised the Netchman's wife back to the surface world and set her down on the shoals of Azura's coast. So what has happened here is that Vivec has been inseminated the egg of Vivec has appeared in the Netchman's in the vessel, the Netchman's wife, by Iam, and Set in this particular case the masculine of. I'm sorry for using the word masculine. It's very chauvinistic, but the part of one half of the reproductive force, who then inseminates the egg, and so now effectively the Netchman's wife has served as the vessel to carry the intersexed child of Set and Iam. So Set and Iam have now become the father and mother of Vivec, which is important because in the tribunal, the Amsavi organism, you could say the Amsavi god, has now effectively it becomes a god, becomes an entity after all three parts have been born and are active and are operating, and therefore the Amsavi god is self-created, which in metaphysics and religion in general is a very powerful idea of a self-created god, a god that wills itself into being. Brought her back to the surface and sets her down on the shores of Azura's coast, which is an actual place. It's on the eastern side of Vardenfell. Unfortunately, it's also a big fucking part of a slab of Vardenfell. It's like very large, so it's really kind of hard to tell where Vivec's village actually was. That might be on purpose. Because I mean, we're also kind of making an assumption that any of this shit actually happened like this.
It could just be a lie. It's like, oh yeah, it's totally born on Azura's coast. I was born in Chadleyville, West Virginia. Totally.
Yeah. Assuming that it does mean something, is the fact that it's on East Morrowind, as in the Morrowind that's past oriented,
right?
Mean anything?
The East would be future, West would be past.
Oh, sorry. Yes, wrong way around. Okay, so so the future of Morrowind is born. Yay.
Mm-hmm. It's also farthest, not coincidentally, I think it's farthest from the Nords.
Yeah.
At any rate, there she lay for 7 or 8 more months. Again, 7 or 8 more months. It just feels to me like they're trying to say, it was like 7 or 8, fucking whatever. Don't stress.
Yeah.
Caring for the egg knowledge by whispering to it the codes of Mephala and the prophecies of Veloth, and even the forbidden teachings of Trinimac. Unfortunately, we don't have the codes of Mephala in total. Every once in a while, something in ESO will mention something about the codes of Mephala, and they might even give you a couple of specifics, but there's not much. It is worth mentioning that... let's see. Mephala and Azura formed the twin gates of tradition in Velothi culture.
Yep.
Which is a little bit more complex. We get into that in later sermons.
This is also part of saying that this is everything that went before. Vivec is automatically already up to speed with all of the past.
Exactly.
And so is ready to move on from it.
And let's see, the forbidden teachings of Trinimac, we talked about that briefly already. Actually, we did almost a whole damn cast on it. So, 7 Daedra came to her one night, and each one gave the new egg new motions that could be achieved by certain movements of the bones. What we're talking about here is, like, it's easy to say martial arts, but this sounds a little bit more to me like a sort of I guess I want to say like a Buddhist kind of Indian concept of sutras of physical. I mean, it's in Hinduism. I think this is a fair thing to say. It's been my impression that there is a lot of the actual practice of religion that is that incorporates physical movement in both dance and just exercise. I'm thinking about yoga specifically at this point.
Depends.
Yeah.
It depends. So, like, the Indians who actually brought yoga to the West, they fully expected and kind of wanted it to basically be appropriated, to be devoid of actual spiritualness. And then a bunch of them kind of reintroduced it of like, no, see, like it totally aligns with chakras and stuff. And that is basically what it's about, is everyone has a kind of, at least in terms of like Hindu spiritualism and stuff, is that there are multiple different chakras. Each has a different color associated with it, and they're in different areas. That's why, you have the dot in India on the forehead, because that's like the mind chakra. And then there's like the throat chakra, there's the chest chakra, there's the stomach chakra, and there's like the like sexual energy chakra. Like there's a bunch of different, and like heart chakra. Like there's all different kind of chakras, and various different yoga poses and stretches are meant to kind of connect and attune you to these, but everyone kind of has a strongest chakra, and that's reflected in someone's personality. So someone's very wise or headstrong. Oh, well, that's your mind chakra. You're very good with words, very loud and boisterous. That's your throat chakra. You can speak to the people and stuff like that. You have a very kind and compassionate heart. That's your heart chakra. Like everyone has something kind of associated. There's some association with it as an individual, like which one might be stronger, but they are all there, and that's why it's important to kind of attune yourself to them. And so in that sense, it's like a religious / cultural practice, but it isn't exactly like this one brings you closer to Kali, and like this one brings you closer to Durga, and this one brings you closer to Shiva. Like that's not really how it works. And it's also just like a health thing. Like, when I've been in India before, there's my uncle just, doing yoga. And sometimes he asks for help. Like, yeah, can you just like push on my back so I can get lower and lower? And it's just good. It's healthy. It's stretching. It's in the morning sun, like, sun's energy and stuff before it gets too hot to do anything in India, which happens like early March. So, like that's kind of like, it's also part of a cultural reflection. So it also depends on like, how deeply you ascribe to certain things, because again, like India is a vast, beautiful, culturally diverse place. And like as much as we're like Hinduism, that's also just like saying Christianity writ large, rather than talking about the baseline division between the Orthodox Church and then the Catholic Church. Never mind then the schism within the Catholic Church that led to the Protestant Reformation, and then all the different kinds of Protestant churches that you have now, never mind the like other Eastern churches that are separate from all of this, like the Armenian Church, the Maronite Christian Church, the Coptic Church. Like there's a whole bunch of different churches that ascribe to Christianity, and it's the same in Hinduism, where they focus on different gods, different practices, or like worldviews and such. So like that's a thing that a lot of people don't really think about, and it's not something they really entertain, because let's face it, most people go to India because they want to see like the old buildings and stuff, and unfortunately a lot of them want to do like yoga retreats, which are all about spiritualism, but you do that in like a $1,400 a night ashram with nary an actual local nearby. It's like, I feel so spiritually connected. It's like, bitch, you're in Srinagar, shut up. Like, anyway, I have thoughts on this, but, that's
hey, I have a puka shell necklace that says I'm very spiritual.
Go to India to find themselves, and it's like, listen.
No, just no.
I have so many jokes running through my head right now. So,
but anyway, that's just like about like yoga and chakras, and how it's like somewhat religiously tied, but also like it's definitely not in some ways. It really depends.
So we've gotten what, 2 paragraphs in?
Yeah. No, I think by the time we hit 2 hours, we'll be done. So these are called the Barons of Moved Like This. Then an 8th Daedroth came a demi-prince called Fa Nuit Hen, or the multiplier of motions known. So this is actually, these are characters you can beat in ESO. And the Barons of Moved Like This and Fa Nuit Hen are Daedra, who in ESO are experimenting with new forms. Fa Nuit Hen has taken on the form of a Bosmer because people, the lore writers in ESO like to fucking torture me. And they are basically Daedra who are practicing learning all as much as they can about martial arts and about warfare and etc. And they supposedly at this point, although I don't think they ever actually.
What about dancing? The Barons have moved like this. I can totally see on Saturday night.
I always saw it as something kind of sexy.
I mean, they have to. They're just sitting there debating the concepts of like the really important questions, like, do we get up, or do we get down? Do you have to get up in order to get down?
Do you get down?
Or can I get down, and then get on up? It's tough.
And then, but
get on the scene.
What if the hokey pokey is
like a sex machine?
Really all about?
Get on up.
Okay, so the multiplier of motions known is it's also interesting that Vivec actually calls Fa Nuit Hen and the multiplier of motions known by name in the sword meeting of Cyrus the Restless and Vivec, which is cool as shit. Fa Nuit Hen said, "Whom do you wait for?" Because Fa Nuit Hen understands grammar. And the Netchman's wife replies the Hortator, and Fanuadhen says, "Go to the land of the Indoril in 3 months' time, for that is when war comes. I return now to haunt the warriors who fell and still wonder why." So the land of the Indoril is, of course, the land owned by House Indoril. Where is that on Morrowind, on Vardenfell, on the island itself? Couldn't fucking tell you. I know that there are areas that that Tamriel Rebuilt says are occupied by the Indoril, but
I want to say like Narcissus and Mournhold are their main.
I think that's a safe bet.
Narcissus is a Halalu stronghold.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So which always
no, sorry,
me.
not Narcissus,
Necrom, yes.
The Halls of the Dead.
Yeah, they're south and east, which it almost doesn't make sense because I think they might have reshuffled where some of these things were, but after the 36 Lessons was written or something, because obviously the place you go to find the war leader who's going to deal with the war with the Northern Men is the border with Skyrim. So you should be heading to the western side of Skyrim, not the south and the east. But yeah.
Then the
Well, okay, so just like a couple things like related to this, and also like what some people were asking about yoga and stuff. Again, I am not a yoga expert. It's basically whatever I've absorbed like offhand from family members, be they like Indian extended family or just like my like mom and my aunt and like my grandma who were hippies back in the day, and so like they knew about that stuff too. My understanding is like, yes, there are associations with gods with chakras, but that it's more important about like the different feminine energies. I think they're called like yoginis or like those like the traditionally like lady yoga, like yoga teachers and practitioners that teach you how to open the different chakras and tell you what's like blocking them. So like there's some chakra where it's like, oh, it's blocked by fear, especially fear of death. So if you conquer that, you can actually open it and that boosts whatever is associated with it. I don't know the particulars. I'm not really into yoga, as you can tell, but there is like an association, but it's like some have like with the same god, like and others may be with like a different minor god or like even like a demon or some kind of like energy aspect. And that's really what ultimately in many ways Hinduism kind of just boiled down to me, is that the gods are just representations of different energies and outlooks. Not so much you're meant to take it seriously as like, yeah, Durga's totally riding a tiger. And it's like, no, it's more about like the feminine energy as presented in like the fiery passions of like motherhood and defending community. And that's why we uphold her and celebrate her. But it's in an association of like this underlying element of Shakti, which is also like a god, but like it's also feminine energy. Like it always came back to energy and like Atman and stuff like that. So I was like, so it's all just like energy. Okay, I don't fully understand it, but that's basically how I've internalized it. Again, if you want like actual yoga experts, go to India, but don't go to some ashram that was recommended by a suburban soccer mom. Go to like the one that's hiding out somewhere on the Gangetic plain in a tiny little village that draws in like thousands of actual Indians as opposed to random hippies from the street. Like that would be your best bet to do that.
Right.
Like if you go to like an actual ashram that's like, you know, run by Westerners or not, and get like a full Western experience, you're still gonna do like yoga and like learn about a lot of this stuff. But just in terms of if you want the actual like full authentic thing, then that means you're going to have to go to like one of the incalculable number of villages that exist in India and just find one. It's like, hey, I'm looking for a yogini, and they're like, okay, let me talk to someone, and then you'll hear from them like 3 days later. It's like, so can you go on like this day and this time? Like, yeah, okay. And then you go and it's like out in a field somewhere, like a farmer's field, or like at an actual temple, and then there you go if you're lucky, right? Like it's a thing. Again, India is vast, diverse. It's a wild place. I love it, but I also understand that not everyone does. And the other thing that I want to note about Fanudhen that no one mentioned, I always interpreted him like the Barons of Move like this as the other spirits from like the previous Kalpa or whatever, like, you know, yoke it if you want to think of it, that learned how to move at strange angles.
Mm-hmm.
So they're also teaching Vivec of like, here's how to bypass the cycle, my guy, or
maybe
my thembo, like
my individual.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
my person.
My person. There you are. My immortal. Oh no, that's a different. No, that's a different thing.
What have you done? But that's like at least my internal interpretation of Fonutaine and the Barons of move like this is they just kind of show up and be like they bring out the scroll, the Elder Scroll itself, maybe wink wink. Like, yeah, so like here's the cycle of death and suffering. And here's how you escape it. You got to move at strange angles. What do we mean by strange angles? Well, we mean like this. It doesn't mean literally walking sideways. It just means finding unorthodox ways of bypassing the cycle. These are the 6 methods known to man or mare so far. There are probably others. If you may find them, you successfully moved at another strange angle. Thus, we are the Barons of Move Like This. I am your teacher. Thank you for
Please direct your attention to this PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, it is like, welcome to my TED Talk. So, like, that's kind of how I always interpreted it.
Well, that's how all of the early sermons tend to go anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. It's really important people showing up and teaching Vivec shit he ain't supposed to know.
My person, moi.
Moi.
Moi's more like a kiss, like moi.
So the barons and the demi-prince joined together into a pillar of fighting styles terrible to behold, and they danced before the egg and its learning image. Look, little Vec, at the face behind the splendor of my bladed carriage, for in it is delivered the unmixed conflict path, perfect in every way. What is its number? So the bladed carriage, yeah, I had this vision of like this like a Dark Souls boss, just a cylinder with swords and weapons and shit, you know. The unmixed conflict path is I mean, I wrote about it and in the New Orleans school, but I'm still not insane about the explanation that I came up with. I think it's another one of those things. It's one of those phrases that I strongly suspect looked good to Kirkbride, if you follow me. It's the idea of unmixed conflict has interesting metaphysical connotations from like conflict is a mixing of opposites. It's the enantiomorphic event is frequently an event that is frequently used to describe an event of conflict. To be unmixed conflict implies that the two opposites have not mixed together. So how do you get conflict without mixing? It's a paradox and therefore interesting from a metaphysical standpoint.
Also mastery potentially from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And mastery is in terms of Vivec is very tricky because Vivec is mixing the unmixable. It's combining things that cannot be combined, and which is only possible with a third entity, which is why we have the observer in the enantiomorphic structure, and why the enantiomorphic structure exists in the first place. So it is said that the number is the number of birds that can nest in an ancient Tribunal tree, less 3 grams of honest work. So just stick that in a fucking calculator.
Yeah.
Tribunal trees are not a thing. This is something that I like talking about in the Elder Scrolls universe. There is no such thing as a Tribunal tree. That I've been able to find.
That we know of, yeah.
Yeah, if somebody wants to correct me, I'd be happy to hear about it, but to the best of my knowledge, this is not a thing. I strongly suspect, I've not confirmed this, but I strongly suspect it's something that Kirkbride and Kuhlman came up with. Sort of like bat tigers. It's just it's just a thing that they came up with. You take that, Wolfram Alpha. Yeah, this puzzle is not actually intended to be solved. Journey to the West, which the 36 Lessons of Vivec are heavily inspired by, has a lot of things like this, of puzzles that are written and are solved by the characters without actually telling you the solution. And the puzzles sound impossible because they are. They're not actually intended to be solved. They're rather sort of a narrative technique to say that, here's an impossible idea, and then our characters are so unbelievably fucking brilliant that they were able to figure it out, but I'm not going to tell you, because why would I? But Vivec in his later years found a better one, and so gave this secret to his people. So the secret is probably if there is one secret of the 36 Lessons of Vivec, it's whatever this is. My suspicion is that this might have something to do with love under will. My suspicion is that this could also, this could also be possibly a reference to the Hortator, or the Nerevarine. That could be the secret. That Vivec gives the Nerevarine to her people kind of jives with Vivec's idea of herself. as any gift to myself is a gift to you, and so on. For I have crushed the world with my left hand, he will say, but in my right is how it could have won against me. Love is under my will only. Well, there's all the fucking Crowley you can get your hands on right there. The left hand is important, for I've crushed the world in my left hand in sort of Western metaphysics and mysticism. The left hand is considered to be one of indirect power and tricksiness and the dark path, the sinister path, The right hand is supposed to be the path of righteousness and of direct power and of and etc. It's said that Jesus sits at the right hand of God. So in my left, so I've crushed the world in my left hand, but in my right hand is how it could have won against me. So this is a. I'm sorry.
Who sits at the left hand of God?
I'm sorry.
Well, Van Helsing, played by Hugh Jackman, obviously.
Yeah, there you go.
No, we don't have anything given because it's not something that's that is mentioned in the Gospels. It's explicitly Christ explicitly says at one point, "Who sits at my right and my left is not for me to grant." Okay. But he's expecting himself to fully sit down at the right hand of the Father. So
there it is. Yeah, I thought I had that right.
Sure.
So love is under my will only is tricky. It's actually a misquote. It's one of the things that kind of bothers me a lot about people who quote Crowley, especially when Crowley was a thing, and was still alive, and just after his death. He got a lot of media coverage because Jesus, that man knew how to open his big fucking mouth. And I have a very dim impression of Crowley. I apologize if there are any practicing thelema people. Thelemics. You might find this a little bit offensive, but I do not respect Aleister Crowley. I think he was a nerd in the most unflattering way. And but I love his ability.
Two spicy takes here. Sheesh.
Yeah, but I love Crowley's ability to do comparative religion. I thought he made some very great connections between a lot of big concepts and religions, and he had a great way of creating a language that was not intuitive but good at explaining what the fuck that he was talking about. And one of these one of these things that he said, one of these phrases that was frequently misquoted and almost never properly understood by anybody who wasn't studying his stuff, was "Love is under my will only." What he actually said was, I really hope I don't fuck this up.
Oh, well, I'm sure he said that.
What he actually said
really
was,
is the meme cast, ain't it?
Yeah, great writing, but Jesus Christ, thank you, exactly. That's the great way to put. Yeah, very similar opinion of Lovecraft. Yeah, great writing, but what the fuck. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is under will only. So that is the actual phrase. Love is under will only, not love is under my will only. Love is under will only, and what that means is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The will, in Crowley's terminology, was the influence or the will of God in the idea of every man and woman is a star, every star is a god. It's the idea that Gnostics generally share, which is the idea of everybody has a god inside of them, or an aspect of God inside of them.
It also echoes Emerson as well, who said, "What is man but a god in ruins?"
Right.
Or man is but a god in ruins, something like that. So that was very. I think Emerson also came up with the idea of the oversoul too.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Was that Emerson? I think it was.
It's also something that Jung shares. Jung also has is very inspired by the idea that we all have a sort of a living God that lives inside of us that we can all communicate with, and a lot of the Red Book is about Jung's communication with this God, and which was by Jung's own admission, goddamn infuriating. It really drove him mad, not literally mad, but like it was very frustrating. And so do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So in other words, the law of like, how to live, of life, of what you're supposed to do on this planet, is do as your God wills you. Do what the divine wants you to do. Love is under will only. Love is a capital L love, as I like to call it, is a very complicated concept that Crowley, I think, came up with, but probably, knowing Crowley, it was just from other ideas related that he put together. Love is, to Elder Scrolls nerds, the easiest way to describe love is it is an enantiomorphic event. It's the interaction of a mortal with God or a divine force, and it is only possible, Crowley suggests, if you follow the will of God. So the only way that you can interact with God in any way, which should be everybody's goal, is to do as God wills you to do. And Crowley's suggestion of how you should do this involved a bunch of other very lovely phrases, which is to, one of my favorites is work free from the lust of result, which is the idea that you would do God's will without trying to reach a particular goal, that you would just do the work for the love of the work, and that you would, and that in the process of allowing yourself to be inspired creatively and to not, get your head all like wrapped around achieving a particular goal, and you just enjoyed the actual process, you will and the end result create something far better than you ever could if you had started off with expectations. And this is something that I have actually been doing for almost a decade, ever since I first got into Elder Scrolls lore and started learning about this process. A lot of the creative things that I do in my life, and a lot of the professional things that I do in my life are done in what I call it, what software developers call a flow state, which is what Crowley was talking about when he discussed work free from the lust of result and love under will, is the idea that you work without trying to achieve a goal. You just concentrate as much as you can on doing what it is that you're doing, and in the process of performing that task, your conscious mind sort of slips away and you fall out of time, and everything starts to suddenly become much easier than it's ever been. And I find when I'm in this state that I'm able to perform and complete tasks. Open source programmers is hack mode. Thank you, Yagni. Yes, exactly. It's the zone. It's you don't suddenly you look up and it's been hours and you've gotten amazing things done and that you never knew you could do. As a musician, it's something that I do all the time. There are literally songs, and parts of songs that I cannot play if I try to play them. But if I just stop trying to play them and just play them, they come right out of me flawlessly. And it is the weirdest experience ever. People who practice yoga may occasionally have a yoga teacher who tells them, stop trying to do the pose and just do it.
That's like Yoda.
Yeah, exactly. Do or do not. There is no try. Yes.
Stop trying to hit me and hit me.
Yeah, stop trying to hit me. Thank you. Yes, exactly. This concept is all over the place in pop culture and other metaphysics and religions and everywhere. The idea of there are some things that you can do without trying that you can't do if you do try. And when you realize the worst part about this, and it's one of the reasons why Crowley says that you have to do this, you have to try to do this without engaging your conscious mind, without engaging your intellect. You can only do it by removing your sense of your ego, basically, and it's what Jung calls the ego self-separation, is to remove your ego from yourself and allow yourself to operate without being hindered by your intellect, without being hindered by your desire. And it's because one of the worst things that can happen to me when I'm in this state is for me to realize that it's happening. And the moment I realize it's happening, I fall out of it and I can't do it anymore.
Okay, on a related note, I know what you mean because I'm a drummer, and there have been times where we've had like those sick jams, and so I'm like, hey, can you play this? And I'm like, I really don't know, but I'll try and do it. And like all the time, I'm actually just like nervous as fuck, and I'm not even really focusing on playing. I'm just basically, I feel like I'm responding to what other people are playing.
Bingo.
And then they say like, dude, that was flawless. It's like, I didn't know how to play that song. Like,
I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. Yeah, and you surprise
or like
yourself, and it's the
like, like, yeah, I know that like there's this part of the song, and I'm just like, oh, fuck it, we'll just try. And then it's like, oh, for once in my life, I'm actually nailing triplets. But like, I don't focus on that because I know, like you said, it's gonna end. So I'm just there, and it's in this weird moment where like I recognize I'm doing it, but it's also like a weird moment of disassociation.
But you can't look at it too hard. Yeah, the moment you examine it too hard, that's when it all falls apart. And there are very few more exhilarating moments than when you suddenly surprise yourself. It's just on a personal note. It's one of the most amazing things that can happen to me.
Training course, I'm like, oh, I did the thing, and then like,
holy shit, I don't suck.
I did a chin up. I was like, wait, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah,
oh, this is weird.
It's an amazing feeling, and it's very it's something that I hope that generally speaking, even if you don't remember it, you've probably experienced it at some point in your life. If you're of any kind of decent age, there's probably everybody that's hearing this has probably experienced the amazing joy of surprising yourself and finding out that you can do something that you didn't know you could do.
Everyone's special and unique.
Well, I mean, everybody is the same in the respect that everybody is unique.
Yeah.
And it's one of those weirder. Yeah, it's one of those things that Taoists are really good at explaining, is the idea of that everybody is we're like, or Buddhists like to say, we're all shit, we're all Hodorowski from the Holy Mountain says, you are feces, you can turn into gold. And it's one of my favorite things about we are the all singing, all dancing crap of the world. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that you can is comforting in a way, that even after 46 years on this shithole of a planet, I could still occasionally find something new about myself, even though I've been living in this husk for a really huge amount of time.
For humans.
And that's like when people ask me why the hell I do this, it's because this is the way that I've discovered these things about life and about myself is through Elder Scrolls lore. And I mean, I just on the eve of the 20th anniversary of Morrowind, I would really like to just say that I wish that everybody could have the same experience as me, because it's fucking thoroughly excellent.
There you go. Fucking excellent, dude.
Yeah, it's thoroughly good. And so we end out sermon 1 with the ending of the words of Psalm Civi, which is another Crowley reference to the ending of the words of Abrahadabra, which is another ridiculously complicated concept that Crowley threw together. I'm here for the Hodorowski impressions.
Actually, on a related note, I don't know how true this is, but I remember hearing about it a while ago, is that there's a Serbian expression, which is be humble, for you are made of dirt, be noble, for you are made of stars.
Yes.
Talking about, like, the carbon is in both of them, and so it's like, you can these are two clearly good things that are associated with earth and sky. And it's a reminder to be humble, but also to be noble.
Krazix, no, it's abracadabra does not come from Crowley. Abrahadabra does. Crowley suggested that abracadabra was a misspelling of an actual magical word, which he insisted was abrahadabra. What does abrahadabra mean? Fuck, man, Google it. That's a lot. You're going to be there a while. You're going to get fucking wiki lost on that. That's a lot.
It's a Pokemon.
It's the Pokemon.
No, that's two Pokemon.
No, one is cadabra, not hadabra.
I mean, yeah, but shush.
No, see, no.
Yes, but also shut
Come
up.
into my house.
Abra.
Disrespect my Pokemon knowledge.
Cadabra. And then Alakazam.
The only thing I know
And
how to
big
sort of say in
mustache.
Serbian is banana and motherfucker. Well, you're done then, Rob. You got all your bases
Not even
covered.
hello?
That's two more words than I know how to say in Serbian.
Yep, same.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um,
But did we want to go over the tetragrammaton elements of Aldivi at this point?
Jesus fucking Christ.
We are literally 2 hours.
I
in.
love how I just saw
Probably
Chris
not.
shrink 2 inches on screen.
Well, in fairness, it comes up in the next sermon, and the next, and the next, so...
Well, then maybe let's save it, because I could use a week or two to think about that.
There
Like,
you go.
I've not given the Tetragrammaton enough attention by any stretch.
Cool.
And it's something that, and the reason why I deflated like that is because it's been on my mind that I've, like, since I started this project, I've always been like, I need to fucking study the fucking Tetragrammaton, and I've never done it. And it's the same thing for the goddamn Sephiroth. I haven't spent enough time for that shit either. Unless Dr. Jonathan
needs
Sledge
to
wants
play
to
more
explain it to
Final
me.
We need to bring Michael on, and he and
Yeah.
I can have debates about the Tetragrammaton.
Well,
There
I
you
was
go.
I wonder. Well, all right. I'll talk about it after we finish recording. But
Yeah.
that's basically that's sermon 1, which is an hour and 40 minutes. So, all right. I'm the way this is going to work in the future, just so that everybody knows, is that we're gonna like some of these sermons are going to take less time than others. So when those happen, we're going to do 2 in 1 show. And when I upload these to YouTube, if that happens, then I'll make sure that the title says Sermon 1 and 2, or Sermon 4 and 5, or Sermon 4 and most of 5, or something like that, you know. But I think we covered most of Sermon 1. I don't think we really missed anything. Theoretically, we could unpack the puzzle of the number of birds that can nest in an ancient tribal tree, but less 3 grams of honest work. But I don't think there's an answer. I don't think there's anything to find there.
Not meant
So
to be.
I think it's just fun, which is going to be a lot of the Thursday's lessons. A lot of it is just going to be fun.
There you go.
So thanks everybody for showing up. Push
Did we get
buttons,
any
ring bells.
emails?
I'm sorry?
We
Did we get
have
any
had an email.
emails?
Do we have an email?
We have had some emails
Yeah,
about
didn't-
Redguard. Was the last one.
I remember. Let me
Hey,
go
it's a
back.
fairway
Is
art.
curved swords a reference to something? And it's like, no.
Yeah, yes.
We have an email from Yagna Stormskull.
Hi, Agni.
Yep.
Who's here in
Yep.
chat?
Yes, yep.
He's here today with
I'm-
us.
I'm designing a martial order / mystery cult that worships many Redguard gods, including Sep, for an apocrypha, and I've come up with 4 precepts to justify Sep worship that I think are good. 1, the Yokudan walkabout and the Velothi walking ways are the same, which is what Sep was trying to teach the Elnafei. 2, Sep, in this belief system, wants the Elnafei to be material and bound by linear time and space, but also to be immortal so that they could have time to walk at least one way to the far shores and potentially reach a higher gradient. 3, Tuwaka invented mortality to make himself more important, sort of making him an Archon. 4, the Serpent constellation is actually Satakal, not Sep, based on the ESO text, A Prayer to the Serpent, which connects the Serpent constellation with the Shedding World skins, Satakal's job, rather than rolling them together, Sep's job. So, resident Redguard expert Felix, and anyone else who wants to chime in, what do you think of those concepts?
Yes.
All right. So, does anyone else want to chime in, or is this strictly my wheelhouse?
No,
now?
I just did. I just did chime in.
Yeah.
No, Felix, you make a start.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right,
go for
so on the surface, I actually like a lot of these. The one that stood out to me the most at the end, I was like, oh wait, hang on. So like Tuwaka, well, there's a couple here. So Tuwaka was, before he was the god of ferrying souls to the far shores, he was the god of no one really cares. He was appointed to the task of ferrying the gods by Tal Papa, who may or may not be Trinimac. And then because there were so many spirits who were learning how to bypass the cycle, which is part of why Tuwaka was the god of no one really cares, because it's like, with death, what's that? We all know how to bypass Satakal. What's going on? But apparently, for whatever reason, and this is definitely like a nitty gritty point in the lore that I do take a little bit of issue with, in terms of there's no real answer for this. If Sep sheds the world skin, apparently they just kind of sit there floating in oblivion for Tall Papa to, assemble Sep out of, the former skins, right? So that's the thing. Tall Papa actually like took the skins and made Sep out of the discarded world skins. So it's not so much that, and again, if we think of the world skin in terms of it's a fusion of Anu and Padme, or in this case, like Sithis and like that sort of fused concept, then what Sep is really like several madnesses of several fused gods. So it's not strictly like when people say Sep is just Lorcan, I'm like, yes, but also no. Yeah, because like so like that whole with like and balling up the skins and stuff. Tall Papa made Sep. Pretty sure no one made Lorcan except Lorcan, who looked at the universe sideways, saw the secret letter of God, and went, "Oh, I'm a nihilist now." Yeah, Chris liked that. Thank you. So those are like the issues I would take in terms of like that aspect. However, the first stuff about like it could possibly be Sep or Satakal, that's actually really fucking good, because you're not wrong. Sep, and like it says that in the monomyth or whatever, Sep is various multiple hungers from multiple skins, which is why he's so mad, because he's got all these different jumbled like timelines and memories and hungers in his mind. So what the fuck is real? And so it's like, you're here to help the spirits. Okay, well, I remember from this world skin I ate this one. Like, no, he did the walkabout. Bad, Sep, bad. So like that's kind of the thing. So when you're saying Sep is actually kind of Satakal, you're not wrong, and I wish more people realize that. So thank you for that. As far as like Tuwaka creating the concept of death, I disagree with that in terms of like the like very just pathetic origin excuse of a story we get for Tuwaka, as well as the clear implication in the monomyth that death didn't start happening until humans were trapped on the skin ball. And it's still kind of unclear whether Tuwaka happens before or after that point in time. It's left kind of vague, or maybe there's something now like in ESO lore that would actually update that. That's all the more reason why I need to actually play ESO now that I finally have it. I just need to find time. But that's one of the few things I don't have these days because I'm working. So it's like, okay, I have money, I don't have time, and if I have time I have no money, and it's a problem. So but that's something that like could potentially work, but it's kind of like getting into gray area. The first part about Sep and like the world skin, bang on, love that. I love that people are thinking about this stuff. It's actually really good to see that I'm not the only one coming up with ideas and recognizing things about the Red Guard. So 10 out of 10, you can see by the smile, like this is just great. Hopefully that answered most of those.
I would vaguely take some sort of thought on with the idea of Tuwaka being the origin point for death. I mean that goes against the orthodoxy of the Red Guard belief entirely, because it's being on the skin ball that causes things to die because they're so far away from Satakal. But the idea that that Tuwaka was around before around before the skin ball and then got the aspect of death, that's another big parallel between him and RK, if that's the case, because there's a whole shebang about RK not really having any purpose until the creation of the world, and so it almost feels like there's a question mark hanging over him. So there's a question of identity there, I suppose. That is Tuwaka properly Tuwaka until the creation of the world? You can kind of make an argument of possibly not, because he can't fulfill all of his purposes until mortality.
Yeah, and that's why he was the god of nobody really cares before, because who cared about that until he became relevant and important? And that's definitely a running theme in Red Guard gods, where like certain gods are created because of what they did in a certain way. So it's like, this god created the Pancratos sword and like died doing it. Okay, this is the god who taught us the ephemeral feint, because like we dig swords and swordsmanship and stuff like that.
Okay, and so Yagner is saying, "Oh, I'm assuming this is all going against Red Guard orthodoxy anyway." That's fair enough. In which case, my gut would be that it would be a very, very distinct form of heresy, because it would almost mean that death is part of the walking way, is part of the trip to the far shores. Which, on one face of it, yes, absolutely, because of how the afterlife works. As we see, if you go there in ESO, something else that you see, it's kind of the Redguard afterlife in a way. But if that's not the only way to do it, then Tuwaka isn't necessarily just death, if you like. I mean, it's kind of in the position that Sovngarde was in pre-Skyrim. The idea that Sovngarde was a place that you could actually find if you looked hard enough and went to the right places. People went questing to try and find a way in. And the idea of kind of walking at strange angles and doing this, that, and the other, to be part of the walkabout to reach the far shores, strikes me as something similar. So unless death is an integral part of that, I don't think death is something that Tuwaka necessarily engineered. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's also kind of how I tend to view it. But again, there's like a lot of good stuff in there. I especially, again, really want to stress, I like the, Sep is actually kind of more like Sadakal. It's like, you would be correct. Again, it's like a little more nuanced or complex than that. But yeah, and it's one of those things where I find people kind of forget that aspect, is that in terms of the Redguard creation myth, Tall Papa plays a much bigger role in terms of creating and like siring over different gods. Like, he puts the stars in place. He, basically uplifts Tuwaka to like a more proper godhood. Like, he was a god, but now it's like, you're a more important central god now, not just a lesser god of, nobody cares, like the god of fuck, I dropped my car keys. Like, he's different.
The god of minor inconveniences.
I've made the world so successful, so now I need a new helper out of old world skins to help me in this stuff, right? So like he's a lot more involved, whereas like the vibe I get from Auriel is just like, hey, so what if time was a thing and then like it happens, but he's kind of hands off in the other aspect of that, aside from, I guess I'm leader now because I gave everyone form, so oops, sorry, my bad. That's kind of the vibe I get, where Tall Papa is like, this thing is a mess, I gotta fix it, and then he starts doing that kind of thing. Yeah, like the thing about Redguards is that there's a lot of interesting things you can do and explore with them beyond just the superficial stuff and trying to just plaster direct comparisons. To an extent with the forebears, it kind of makes sense of like, oh, Morrowind, goddess of love, yeah, okay, fine. Yours is like some weird thin white lady. Ours is like big 4-titty mama, but like different strokes for different folks. Not gonna yuck your yum.
Everybody fucks different.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, it's like
Kava, the air
kind. Okay, it's like, yeah, there's some similarities. Meanwhile, the crowns are there like raging, like, it's no. And then if you actually look into the lore of like, wait a second, so this is made of this. That's not who this can possibly be. And if I interpret it this way, then the hunger is technically time. So, and it also, like, Akel is closer to the Aka shard. So maybe people understand it backwards. Like, there's a lot of fun you can have with Redguard heresy. So I love to see someone else experimenting with Sep in that way. I really, really love it. Love is under will only.
Ooh. Well, I hope that answered your question, Yagni. We're running out of time. So let's call it here. Another 2 weeks, we'll do another sermon or two and see how that goes. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Right.
Press buttons, ring bells, sub to my OnlyFans. Bye.
This is gonna be a running joke now. It needs to go on the bingo card.
Oh yeah.